We have a good chance right now to think about what kind of country the United States of America intends to be during the next not only 4 years, but the next 50 years. Why do I say that? 2020 is a presidential election year, and of course, President Donald John Trump is running for re-election. Some people will immediately notice that President Trump's presidency has been marked by remarkably poor leadership. He is dishonest. He lacks empathy. He has no sense of integrity. And his administration has been, if anything, marked by repeated instances of corruption, deceit, and outright injustice. But what are we going to be for the next 25 or 50 years? This election coming up in 2020 will set the stage for that. We will decide not only by the person we choose, but by the number of people who go out and vote, by the intensity, by the vigor of our electorate to go vote in the face of what's going to be an unmistakable attempt at voter suppression, voter intimidation, and voter misinformation by the Trump administration to keep people from the polls, to keep young people from the voting, to keep people of color from voting, to keep poor people from voting, to keep seniors from voting, to keep people who have a sense of commitment to justice, inclusion, and fairness from voting. The Trump administration is going to try to marginalize not only the ballot process by limiting access to the ballots, they're going to try to drive up the polling efforts from white religious nationalists, white Christian nationalists who will come out and vote because their notions of patriarchy, sexism, nationalism, and racism, and white supremacy, as well as their commitment to neo-fundamentalism and capitalism, convince them that Trump's administration is in line with their faith. First of all, they're wrong. The religion of Jesus is not a religion of hate or a religion of fear. It is a religion of love and faith and courage and strength. It is a religion of hospitality, not a religion of exclusion. And therefore, my word to the Christian nationalists, to the Christian evangelicals is, you need to rethink your notion of the religion of Jesus. Jesus is not like the faith you are portraying. Secondly, those of us who are prophetic followers of Jesus, as well as those of us of other faiths and of no faith, must redouble our efforts to vote. We must redouble our efforts to make sure that people get to the polls. We must challenge attempts to limit polling places. We must insist on voting by mail because in the face of a global COVID-19 pandemic, it is simply unjust to require people to expose themselves to the risk of infection in order to cast a ballot. And so we have work to do. We have work to do, and our work this year is going to affect the future of this nation for the next 50 years. Why 50 years? Because the next president is going to appoint at least 2 Supreme Court justices, perhaps more. And if we are not careful, the efforts of Mr. Mitch McConnell to stack the federal courts over the last 4 years will be intensified in the next 4 years if President Trump is reelected. By defeating President Trump, hopefully, the next president will appoint judges on the U.S. Supreme Court as well as the lower federal courts who will respect integrity, fairness, justice, equality, and will be guardians of our faith and liberty as opposed to warriors against us. Finally, I want to send a shout out to the wonderful, wonderful protesters of all ages, of all backgrounds, of all religious beliefs and no religious beliefs, of all income backgrounds, who are in the streets and who are challenging corporate and political forces of empire. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for confronting. Thank you for refusing to back down. Thank you for refusing to be intimidated. Thank you for refusing to allow name calling by Mr. Trump, misidentification and mislabeling of Mr. Trump and his allies to discourage you or dissuade you. Thank you for insisting that Black Lives Matter. Thank you for insisting that corporate power does not mean the common good. Thank you for demanding that we live up to our creed as opposed to use our creed as a slogan to cover misdeeds. Stay in the streets. Stay in the streets. Not only stay in the streets, get to the ballot box. Keep the pressure on. And those of us who are older will be cheering with you, working with you, walking with you, and if we can't walk with you, we will be fighting with you in our own ways. By all means, do not slack up. There will be an effort to cause people to say, if you would be simply more moderate, we can get along with you. The time for half measures and pious words is over. The time for pretending that moderation is the response for hatefulness is over. Hatefulness must be met with fierce love. Hatefulness must not be met with timidity. Hatefulness must be met by bold, courageous, and bodacious love, and faith, and fearlessness, and a determination to show that those who are the ambassadors of empire do not have the stronger will or the better skill at governance or at organizing. We can be a better people, not because we are, but because we have a sense of what better is supposed to be. We are not as good as we have said we are, but we can be better than we are, and we can live up to our highest ideals. We can do that by beginning to work together to fight against the powers of oppression and corruption that Mr. Trump's administration represents, by dismantling Mr. Trump's and his cabal, putting him out of office, and beginning to, as the saying goes in the preamble of the Constitution, form a more perfect union. I believe we can be that people. I believe our fight will help us be that right people, that people. Let's keep fighting.